Know your worth, even if it gets lonely. This is advice that I wish I knew in my later teenage years. In life, there are people that prey off of others not knowing their worth, not being fully secure in themselves yet. And this happens from a very young age. They know that, whether it's validation or attention or, whatever it is, that you want that. And so they can manipulate you in order to get that. But that only exists when you're not secure in yourself. The thing is, you'll realize as you get older that knowing your worth costs you proximity to the people who benefited from you doubting it. In other words, people are better off when you are not fully aware of who you are because they can manipulate you. And what you have to understand is you shouldn't be afraid of loneliness. Loneliness is not always rejection. Oftentimes it's the absence left that gets left behind when you stop overgiving. The more that you give someone, the more that they are anticipating you to act in a certain way. If you punch someone for 100 days in a row and on the 101st day you don't punch them, they'll thank you. If you give someone $100 100 days in a row and on the 101st day you don't give them money, they'll hate you. And so, what does this mean? When you're giving someone a type of behavior that they want and then you stop giving them that's going to piss them off, and then that's when you're lonely. And so that type of behavior that they like is the easily manipulated version of you, the one that would do what they ask because you're not sure and secure in who you are in your identity. A common theme of my channel is that everything boils back down to identity. The key to a good life, both socially, financially, and with various relationships, is your identity. Even your, spirituality. It always boils back down to your identity. Once you realize this, it's going to change your entire life. When you raise your standards, you reduce your audience. Very basic concept. This isn't failure, it's alignment. So you are basically figuring out who your crowd, who your people are. And a lot of times you're in this weird in-between phase where you no longer fit in with that old group that you used to fit in with. And now you want to fit in with a new group, but you're also not there yet. You haven't developed as a person. So now you're in this in-between phase, which is the lonely phase. This is a phase that unfortunately I've been on for I want to say like 6 years now, 5-6 years now. And it can take a very long time. But the key is never sacrifice your value and your self-worth for the sake of fitting in or for the sake of not being lonely. I've told this story a few times before. I'm not sure if I did it on my YouTube or on my social media, but when I was in middle school, I was, a very popular kid. I was, on all the different sports teams, baseball, basketball, cross country, lacrosse. I did it all. I was pretty popular, had a high social status for middle school, whatever. And then I went to high school, and it was basically like 4 middle schools merged into our high school. And so there were all these new kids. And at first I got in with like that athlete crowd and everything. And I very quickly realized these people were fake. And I didn't like it. I knew they had talked bad behind my back. And so what I did was I made the courageous decision when I was 15 or 16 years old that I was just gonna not make a dramatic exit or anything, but just turn from friends to acquaintances. I just sort of disassociated with them. I just stopped hanging out with those fake people. And the first 2 years was like, imagine this, I'm a teenager in high school. These are supposed to be like the most social years of your entire life for a lot of people. And I couldn't do it, and it was like super lonely. Like, I mean, I didn't go to any of the dances like homecoming or prom or any of that. I just didn't participate in major things. And the main reason was they weren't respecting me for my worth. To give you guys a really easy example of this, freshman year, it's lunch, and it was this giant lunch table, and there's like 15 guys, 15 girls. We're all sitting there or whatever. And so there's about 30 of us, give or take, at this table. They made their plans for like homecoming right in front of me, and this is no exaggeration, every single person at the table was invited. They made the plans in front of me, but I was not invited. And I just like, I remember, and this was like days in a row that they would talk about their plans leading up to homecoming. And I just remember in my head, I was so flabbergasted at how disrespectful it was that I was silent, because I was like, if I even give these guys an ounce of thinking that I care, like, I lose. And so I just sat there silent and acted, indifferent about the situation, like I didn't care. But deep down, bro, that pissed me off to another level. And so, yeah, eventually, I one day I just left that table and I would just go to the library every single day for lunch. And that was that. And yeah, I wasn't dramatic about it. There was no confrontation. I just said, you know what? I'm going to sever ties with these people, and I'm going to, hold my self-worth. Flash forward, now that we're out of school, a lot of people have seen some of my social media videos, and it's crazy. You got, like, it's straight out of a movie. Like, everyone's been calling me and they're like, yo, Jet, like, how you been, bro? Like, these are people that, like, do not give a shit about me, and I know it. And now they all, like, want to be friends again. It's like, that's not how this works. And so what you'll realize is that when you value your worth on a long enough timeline, eventually you'll level up, and then people are going to try to come back to you and be like, yo, like, dude, Jet, we used to be friends. Come on, you don't remember back in the day? It's like, bro, we were never friends. No. And so it's all about alignment, right? I'm sure most people that are watching this video, they have similar stories where they felt like they didn't belong in a group, they weren't being respected. You are better off. There's a clip of this guy on a podcast that says, you're better off having no friends than having shitty friends. Amen to that. That is a true story. It's just so hard when you're growing up to go through that. But people are comfortable with you until your boundaries interrupt their access. And so the second that you actually stand firm and stand up for yourself, they get all mad. Oh my gosh, like, why are you acting like this? Why are you acting like that? You have been pushing my buttons this whole time, being disrespectful, and now that I'm questioning you on it, now that I'm holding you accountable, now you're mad. That doesn't say anything about me. That actually says something about you, right? Being valued only for your usefulness is really, it feels like belonging, but it isn't respect. That's what you have to understand. So Aristotle talks about 3 types of friendships. The first one is utility, second one's pleasure, third one's virtue. But utility is like, hey, I'm in the same class as you. I'll give you notes on these things that I'm good at. You give me notes on the things that you're good at. That's utility. And so when you are being valued for your utility, it does feel sort of validating. It feels sort of good, because at the end of the day, you're still being valued. But eventually you got to realize, okay, if I no longer could give that person notes, would they still give a shit about me? The answer is no, right? Self-respect creates silence before it creates connection. That's what you have to understand. And anytime that you truly start to have respect for yourself, you'll realize you got to cut off ties with these people. And then it's a regrowth period where you have to rebuild and develop genuine connections, which would be the third type of friendship that Aristotle talks about, which is the friendship of virtue, which is, there's meaningfulness, it's fruitful, and you need more of those friends in your life. Now, I'm not saying in life you shouldn't have friends of utility. That might be like someone at work. That's just part of life. But these can't be the core people. If you can't trust somebody, if they're not respecting you for you, yeah, you got to sever ties. The discomfort of loneliness is sharper at first. When I severed ties with those people, I went from in middle school being one of the most popular kids, and then even in high school being with, I don't know what you'd call them, just like the athletes, the jocks, whatever. I know that's super stereotypical, but that's the easiest way to illustrate it for you guys. When I severed ties, it was the first time in my life where it's like Friday night, Saturday night. What am I doing? Absolutely nothing. I'm sitting in my room alone. And although it hurt so much at the time, I would always ask God, I'd be, God, why am I going through this? By the way, first world issues right here, like loneliness is your biggest issue. Like I'm fully aware, but I was just like very much lacking connection with my peers at such a young age where it's so important to connect with people. And I just didn't get that for years and years on end. And so I would just sit in my room and I'd be like, God, why? And now in retrospect, I realized that helped me to grow to the person that I am. And how I'm always talking about identity on my channel. I found my identity by being isolated from everyone else, not being influenced by others, and then I could be an observer. I could see the world and people for who they were, and I realized who I wanted to be like and who I didn't want to be like. And I drew genuine, I found out genuine aspects of myself. For example, I grew up my entire life playing baseball, and then I realized that I just put my identity in the fact that I played baseball and all my friends played baseball, so I quit. And this is like I was like actually pretty good at it. Like I would travel around the United States. I was like going to like all-star games in New York, and it was crazy. And I just quit. And I remember everyone was like, what? Why would Jet quit? And I was like, I didn't even like it. I just put my identity in it. So isolation and finding your self-worth is awesome, because you'll start to like realize like what you actually like. And you know, I'm appreciative for that. Like it was a struggle for me. And now another benefit is I'm comfortable being isolated. I'm comfortable being alone for the time being. It's definitely not a long-term thing, but sometimes you just got to put your head down and work. Many relationships, you have to understand, only survive on your self-neglect. You're not thinking clearly. You're not understanding the reality of the relationship and how that person's using you. When you don't value your self-worth, the relationship thrives, because as they say in the animal kingdom, there are 3 types of relationships. This is not the Aristotle. There's like the parasitic, mutualistic. I'm forgetting all 3 of them, but the parasitic one is one person preys on the other. One animal preys on the other. It's like a tick on a dog, right? The dog doesn't benefit in any way, but the tick does. That's that same type of relationship. Your self-neglect is allowing that parasitic relationship to be inhabited. Knowing your worth pretty much forces you to sit still with yourself without distractions or validation, which is what I was talking about before. You're going to figure out who you really are. And so there's also a difference between self-worth and identity. These are 2 different things. There's a difference between self-worth and understanding the things that you like. Self-worth is mainly like, hey, I'm a human being and I deserve to be treated with this level of respect. And so when you actually hold yourself to that standard, when you say, I'm not going to let other people treat me like this, these are the results that you'll get. You'll start to figure out your identity, and you'll start to figure out how you can develop self-belief, which then turns into everything else in your entire life. This is the reason why everyone knows the cliche story of like the popular kids peaked in high school. It's because the popular kids constantly were fed and reinforced validation to where they never got the ability to figure out like who they truly were. And it was the loners, the people that weren't doing anything, that were like forced to confront themselves early on, and they didn't conform. They were true to who they were. That later in life, that propelled them, because in the real world and free markets, it's like very much like, you know, whoever is that guy will win in life. You know, if you are true to your identity, you're going to win in life. And that's what popular kids never got. And yeah, almost most of the people that you see that are liked by everyone, they don't have self-worth. Because if they did, they would actually stand for something, you know? They're just trying to be everyone's friend. A friend to everyone is an enemy to themselves, right? But yeah, growth oftentimes, it feels like isolation, because you're no longer meeting people where you've outgrown, especially if you're still in your hometown. Like, if you're outgrowing these people, it's gonna feel lonely. But you have to almost view the loneliness as a transition. It's not a destination. As I was saying before, you're in this in-between space. You've outgrown the people that you used to hang out with, and now you're trying to grow and find your new clique, your new group of people. And that takes time. Like I said, I've been doing this 5-6 years, which sounds insane, especially at my young age, but that's the cost of it. The right people don't require you to shrink. You'll naturally fit. You just naturally come together. That's what I feel like adulthood is yeah, you're trying to find your career and you're trying to find your identity, but it's also finding the group of people that you want to go through life with, because that's what really is important. Being alone well aligned is healthier than being surrounded while compromised. It's almost like an infection. Like it trust me, it is better to be alone. Once again, I'm going to quote that one podcast clip that I saw. It's better to be alone than to have shitty friends. And eventually you'll learn that. For some people it can take as long as a decade, even more. But you have to accept this because you're going to be better off for it. If honoring yourself costs you company, that company was never on your side, right? It's just, once again, it's a parasitic relationship. They're like preying off of you. Last thing I'll say, self-worth, it's quiet. It doesn't announce itself, but it does change everything around it. You have to understand that there's not going to be some crazy experience that happens where like an aha moment where you're like, oh my gosh, like my self-worth is this now. Like it's not like one specific instance. It's over a period of time. Your self-worth changes. You start to figure out who you are, and you recognize that you need to have respect for yourself, and that's why you put up, boundaries with other people. And if they don't like that, then they were abusing those boundaries, and that's not your person, right? Thank you guys for watching.